Hey everyone, it's Rob B here with Rob D, and you are listening to the Property Podcast. And it's our least favourite episode of the year. Probably your favourite, but our least favourite because we look back at what we said. And at the beginning of the year, we made a lot of predictions about property, but also beyond. And every year, for some silly reason, we review those predictions. So consider it an early Christmas gift to you, this episode, where we look back and go, okay, what did we say? How wrong did we get it? All right, we'll see.
Yes, welcome back to the podcast. Thank you for joining us. In case you don't know, we run a business that buys more than £100 million worth of property every year. You can find out about that at propertyhub.net/invest. And to try to prove to someone, you, ourselves, that we have a right to be doing this, I don't really know why we do it, but we do. We make predictions and we'll be reviewing those for you in just a second. Before we do, a quick roundup of the news from this week. It's been a big month for property price data. Halifax reduced their latest monthly numbers just after we recorded our market update podcast, so we can update you on that. But I will not do it now because it will spoil up what we've got coming up in a minute, where we review our house price predictions for the year. So we'll keep that on hold for now. The other thing that's been in the news this week, which has really annoyed me, is that the Housing Minister is looking at adding a new ban into the Renters' Rights Bill. Because there's not quite enough in there at the moment. He now wants to ban landlords being able to collect rent in advance of more than 1 month. So at the moment, if, for example, you rent to students from overseas who are currently outside the UK, they have no UK credit history, there's not really any referencing that you can do on them, it's pretty standard to take sometimes up to a whole year in advance, and that's a way of reducing your risk. But according to the Housing Minister, this is extortionate and unfair. So if he manages to get this amendment in, that is something you won't be able to do in future. And this has annoyed me because it's like they're removing all means by which property owners can actually make a decision. So you're not going to be able to accept bids of above the asking rent. You're now not going to be able to take rent in advance. It's like, given that there is such a dramatic shortage of rental property that you've now got 20 applicants for every home, there needs to be some way of deciding between them. And it's like they're trying to turn it into a lottery system. And of course, with things like this, where you can't take rent in advance, then of course it is the applicants who you might be a little unsure about who are going to end up losing out. And there's no incentive for property owners to take a chance on anyone because, of course, if it doesn't turn out well, it's going to be harder than it was to bring the agreement to an end. So I'm sorry, Rob, to start the episode with a moan, but that got to me this week.
I hear you, Rob, and I feel sorry for people who are in that position if this happens. Remember, it's an if at the moment, not a definite. But if this happens, I do feel sorry for those people who want to rent, who don't have the credit history, maybe because they've just come to the UK for the first time, who have a way of accessing the market, and that, for many, will be removed. I think a lot of landlords just won't entertain those type of tenants. But it is an if at this point, so hopefully common sense will prevail. We will see. However, as much as I'd love to discuss the failings of every government that we've had since we started the podcast, Rob, I think it's time possibly to look at our failings or success, because we need to review our predictions. It is that time. So let's get this show on the road. Let's rip off the Band-Aid and let's listen to what we had to say about the big one, UK property prices. I'm going to say that property prices in the UK average, will be somewhere between 0.1 and 2.5. So in that range, I believe property prices will increase slightly in 2024.
My core prediction is that I think house prices will be up, and I think they're going to be up by 4% or more. But I think there's a world in which something goes very wrong and house prices go down by 4% or more. So what I'm actually saying is that prices won't be in the range of -4 to +4. So I've given myself a huge band to be wrong. I've got 8% where I could be wrong here.
Rob, before we reveal the result, I think it's super important. I feel like I'm going into my defence case already, but I feel it's very important to highlight that everyone else was far more negative about the property market when we made these predictions. There were talks of falls of 4-5%. I think the most optimistic ones said, flat at 0%. We were outliers with these predictions.
We absolutely were. Looking back now and you saying like 1 to 2.5, that did sound punchy. It really did. I know it's hard to believe that now, but I can remember how things felt back in January. So let's go and look at the data. So we always use nationwide for this, and we use calendar year. So I've gone and worked out the actual change from January, when the average price was 257,000, to November, which is the most recent data we have, which is £268,144. That, Rob, is a 4.2% increase.
Wow. Well, congratulations, Mr. D. That has you correct. You know what? I'm wrong, but I'm content with my wrong. I feel like I was in the right direction. I'm kidding myself. But I feel like I was in the right direction. I feel like I was being bold with the prediction, but I just didn't have what you had for breakfast that day, and you were a bit bolder, and your prediction paid off. Congrats, because, like I said, our predictions were outliers, and yours in particular really was. So it's a great result for you. That's a good start. You are definitely winning this year's predictions.
Yeah, let's stop now. But there is a classic case of being right for the wrong reasons, to be fair, because the reason I said that prediction is I thought something would change this year for either good or bad. I didn't think we'd have a nothing-y sort of year, which is why I went plus or minus 4. In fact, we've had surprisingly good growth, above 4%, on a pretty nothing-y sort of year, which is not what I expected. So I'd have fluked my way to the right result there. But I'll also mention that we use Nationwide. I mentioned Halifax earlier. Their numbers have come out even stronger. They are now showing the average property price at a fraction under 300,000, a new record high. And property prices up 4.8% on an annual basis. So prices ending the year strong. But obviously, that is a UK average. What property prices do within any given area could be completely different. So that's why we always make a prediction about what will be the top performing areas. Let's listen to what we said. The 3 that I picked as my top 3 are Nottingham, Birmingham, and Leeds. The only slightly more interesting thing I will say is keep an eye on Newcastle.
So I've picked 2 to finish in the top 3, and I've gone for Birmingham also. I've also put Manchester in there. This is the one I was most nervous about, Rob, because historically, this is where we've probably built up a little bit of credibility. So every year, I feel under immense pressure to get this right, because over so many years, we have delivered. Now, I think it depends on how we want to look at these results, because we don't often include Northern Ireland in our thinking. We do sometimes mention Belfast in particular as an interesting area, but it's a different market. It's outside of our world of expertise. And Belfast, for complete transparency, has been by far the best performer over the last 12 months. It's actually double of second place, which we'll reveal in a moment. So Belfast, if we include it, is by far the winner. But I think it's fair to say that when we were making our predictions, we weren't thinking of Northern Ireland, although we do have listeners in Northern Ireland, so hello to you, but we weren't. So if we go outside of Belfast, then the order is Manchester, Glasgow, Liverpool, then Leeds, then Newcastle, then Birmingham. That's your top 6. Manchester at the top, Glasgow second, Liverpool third, Leeds fourth, Newcastle fifth, Birmingham sixth. That's probably the worst we've ever done for picking areas.
We can't really dress this one up, can we? That's just not a good result. Thankfully, you had Manchester, which was number 1, excluding Belfast. I wouldn't have had Manchester in there. I didn't have Manchester in there because it has had so much growth in the past. I thought other places would outstrip it this year. But no, Manchester powers on.
Yeah, Leeds just outside the top 3 there, but I'm really surprised at a makeup. Manchester, not surprised by, I predicted that, and you could say I got 50% right, but the other 2, Glasgow and Liverpool, I wouldn't have had them in my top 5, if I'm being really honest. So that's been a surprise this year.
Yeah, not great. Yeah, I did also say keep an eye on Newcastle. Newcastle came in 6th or 5th if you exclude Belfast, and that was a big leap up from previous years when it had been languishing down the bottom. So I suppose saw that one coming, but I think on the whole, Rob, we've got to give ourselves a miss here.
Yeah, so good start on house prices, quite poor on areas, which is unusual. It's the areas is normally our strong point. So did that trend continue when we made our predictions about London? Because we always look specifically at London as well. Again, I see London being one of the worst performing areas in the UK as a city, but also I see it being in negative territory. I think London will see falls with their property prices this year.
I'd say London to be worst performing region because it was last year. I think it will be again this year. Okay, doesn't get any better, does it? No, that's complete miss as well. So according to Zoopla, which is where we get the regional breakdown from, London was not in negative territory, like you said. It was up 1.1%. And it was also not the worst performing area, which I said it would be, because the southeast, southwest and the east of England all came in lower. So couldn't have been much more wrong there.
Yeah, at 1.1% growth, There are multiple places that did worse. Southampton, Cambridge, Leicester. That's a surprise. Edinburgh. That's crazy, isn't it? Like, Edinburgh's one of the worst in the country and Glasgow's one of the best. Just a bit of a weird year. Bournemouth down there as well. Portsmouth, barely any growth at all, 0.1. And falling, our good old friend every year, Aberdeen, down another 0.6. Surely at some point Aberdeen's got to recover, because it seems every year it's in the doldrums. Maybe next year is Aberdeen's year. That's not a prediction. That's just a passing comment. But a weird year, Rob. A weird year. How can you have Glasgow right at the top and then Edinburgh right at the bottom? I know they're different, but they are operating in similar types of markets. And then Leicester, near areas that have got really strong fundamentals, really down as well. It's just a real mix and bit of a mess of a year in terms of the structure of this top 20 of cities that we have. It's like they're all over the place. There doesn't seem to be any pattern. It's not like, all the cities in this area have done well. Maybe this is me trying to, again, justify why we're so far out. But let's face it, London, we're off. And our cities, yeah, okay, I got Manchester right. But besides that, it's a pretty poor show. Can we get things back on track when it comes to our rental predictions?
I'm going to go with up somewhere from 4 to 5% would be my prediction.
I'm going to go up as well, but my range is 2 to 4%. So I do think rents will increase, but I don't think it's going to be quite as much as you've predicted. We really should have stopped after the house prices, Rob.
Yeah. So we go by the ONS for rents because they include not just newly advertised rents, but also within tenancy rent increases. So it gives you the broadest picture. Also tends to give you the lowest number, which would have helped us out. But even this more conservative measure of rents has come out way off. Way off what we predicted. So according to the ONS, UK private rents up by 8.7% over the last 12 months. So you had 2 to 4, I had 4 to 5. We're just both completely wrong on that. Yeah,
I tried to think back to our rationale back then, and rents were softening at the time. And I think the mistake, at least I made, was looking at the current market and not the fundamentals behind the rental market. And the fundamentals being supply and demand and the data that we had on the population increases. I think I was too led. I think I did the typical thing that economists do, which is just predict a bit more of the same. And I just followed what they do and I did the same there. And I'm a bit annoyed at that because I try to avoid that pattern of behaviour, but I think it's the easiest thing to do. And I think that's what we did there. The rental growth that we predicted is very, very strong rental growth. It's not growth, that's a boom. That's another year where we've seen a rental boom, which for returns is very, very positive. And we're going to get onto interest rates in a moment. And I'm sure we're not going to be breaking news to you that they are down this year. With rents accelerating the way they are and now rates starting to soften, it's a very, very interesting property market. The returns are much better than I think people know or understand. And I'm so surprised when you see rental levels at that level. That's just crazy.
I know. As an investor, what a great year, because your house price has gone up by more than expected. Rents have gone up even more, which is making your returns look better. Happy days. So put all that together, a far better year for investors than we predicted. But we don't care about whether it's been a good year for investors. We care about ourselves and our predictions. So let's see if we can rescue this in any way. And we'll move on to what's historically been my absolute worst category, which is interest rates.
I think interest rates will finish lower than they are right now.
If I had to guess, and it is a guess, I'd say 4.75, maybe 4.5. So 2 or 3 cuts.
It's a flip-flop year, Rob. Normally, you do really bad at this, and you've absolutely nailed it, which is great, and I'm technically correct as well. So we're back. A little bit of credibility has been restored. I mean, you've absolutely nailed that one, so congrats. You know what? For those listening going, well, of course it was going to be that. It's so easy to say that now. At the beginning of the year, it's hard. Nobody is stupid as us to actually publicly put stuff out there and then publicly review it. I don't think anyone else is nuts enough to do this. So I promise you that getting it right is harder than it seems. And I think we should take some comfort that we've got one right there, Rob. So yes, wrong on areas. Yes, wrong on rents. But on house prices and interest rates, we've got ourselves a little bit of credibility. But will we lose it all now, Rob? Because we go outside of our sphere of competency and we talk about different markets and different world events. And we started off with the FTSE 100 and predicting where that would be at the end of the year.
So I'd say up, but only slightly so. Basically flattish.
I think the markets will close above 8,000, which is up from where we are now by at least 5%.
Okay, so I would say that I am wrong because I said flat-ish. You said above 8,000, which is correct. In fact, at the end of last year, the FTSE was around 7,600. It is now, on the day of recording, at 8,300 or so. So comfortably above 8,000. If anything, Rob, you underdid it. But I think by both the wording and the sentiment of what you said, we can count that as a win.
Yippee! Right, okay. So another one right. That's positive. Let's go to possibly the most wild category now. We've had some fun with this one over the years, and it's Bitcoin.
I can see it being a big up year for Bitcoin, and I'm not going to put a number on it.
I think at some point during 2024, Bitcoin will see gains of at least 30%. So that's a win, Rob. Yes, you could say 30% was conservative, but remember, Bitcoin, again, had an absolutely nothing year last year. And for us to be bold on Bitcoin was quite different from what everyone was saying. In fact, Rob, I want to play back a clip, something I did say about Bitcoin. Let's listen to this. Bitcoin is back, baby. Yep, it's back. I think crypto is back. See? It's back. No denying it. It is back. So the question, of course, everyone wants to ask is, how many millions did I make from that conviction?
With conviction that strong, Rob, I can't even imagine. You must be joining us from your own island right now.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Branson. No, I'll be with you in a minute. No, sorry, he isn't next to me because I invested exactly zero. I still owned Bitcoin and I had some before, but with that conviction, you think I would have piled in. The truth is, Bitcoin is fun for us, but I think it's more for interest and fun rather than meaningful investment. Maybe I should be backing up my conviction. I do with property, but with Bitcoin, I haven't. With the FTSE, yes, I do invest a little bit, so I've benefited from that prediction. But really, I could have benefited a whole lot more if I'd backed Bitcoin at the level of the enthusiasm I displayed at the beginning of the year. But Rob, let's not get distracted. That is correct. That's another one that we've got right.
It is correct. So to put a number on it, it was around 42,000 US dollars at the start of this year. It's now floating around 100,000 at the time that we're recording. So that is a gain of at least 30%. It's a gain of more than 100%. And it is indeed a big up year. So we both got that right. Just to acknowledge the difficulty in predicting anything, though, when you put a timescale on it, Bitcoin did very, very little for most of the year. And it's only around about sort of US election season in November that it suddenly woke up and made a huge leap upward. So if the timing had been a little different, we easily could have ended up getting that one wrong. But luckily, we did not.
So did we ruin it all with our last prediction? It was a prediction about the election. I think it's a shoo-in for Labour. I think generally people are quite fed up with the Tories. Well, yes, technically correct, but I think everybody would have got this one right. Maybe some people didn't, but for me, this was obvious. I said people are quite fed up with the Tories. I feel people are starting to feel that way about Labour already. I think the honeymoon period, it seems, is already over, at least according to the opinion polls at the moment. So the next election, I think, will be very interesting. But yeah, got that one right, which allows us to have another tick. I'm okay, I think, with this year, Rob. We got house prices right, which is important. I am a bit disappointed on the city selection. Maybe we redeemed it by getting a lot of other things right within the podcast. But it's interesting. Our strongest area we've failed on this year, and everything else we normally do a bit rubbish on, we've actually done quite well on. So a bit of a flip-floppy year. It's been a weird one. You said it earlier. Prices up by over 4%. Rents up by over 8%. And interest rates falling. That's a great year by any measure for property investment. But I don't think the sentiment matches it. I don't know how you feel. Maybe next year the sentiment will catch up. But people aren't acting like they've just had a year of 4% up in capital growth and 8% up in rents and interest rates falling. If you said that at the start of the year, that's what we're going to have, everyone would have been delighted. Yeah, I feel everyone's end of the year a bit,
Yeah, I agree. It's been a meh sort of a year and the numbers do not match it. And it's already making me nervous about doing our predictions for 2025, which we're going to be doing in January, because I just don't know where I'm going to go with most of this at the moment. It's so hard to work out where sentiment goes from here. But I think, Rob, to maybe make you feel a little better about our performance this year, look, of course, the whole thing is just a bit of fun. No one in reality, I hope, is going to be making investment decisions in property over the course of a year, and therefore what we say shouldn't make any difference whatsoever. But to the extent that we've been wrong, it's mostly been on magnitude. Like if you made your big decisions on investment based around what we said, yeah, you wouldn't have picked up the absolute best area, but nor would it have been a total dud. You would have been expecting prices and rents to go up. They did. They just went up by more than we thought. You wouldn't have been caught out by interest rates. I'm not trying to spin this into some absolute banner year and say that we're heroes, but I'm just saying it's not that bad. It could have been a lot worse, and maybe next year it will.
Maybe, we'll see. But you know what? We'll make it a good episode for you if you haven't enjoyed our ups and downs already, because I want to give you a Hub Extra resource that's going to benefit you. And it's actually a small one with a reminder. So the small resource is that I, like Rob, use AI quite a lot day to day. And one of the things I've wanted for a while is a shortcut on my phone to be able to access ChatGPT. For some reason, I didn't think to check about Perplexity. The answer is, by the way, it doesn't exist for ChatGPT, but Perplexity do. And you can search from your screen on Perplexity. So if you've got an iPhone, hold it down, your screen will start shaking, press the plus button in the corner, and then search for Perplexity. If you've downloaded the app, if you haven't, just download it, it's free, and then you can add that tool. Because, Rob, you've talked about it in the past, and I'm very much the same. I use AI for search first and research first, and then go to Google second. Google now is the secondary search engine for me, and AI is the first. And I don't think the world has quite got there yet, but it will. And I think in 2025, it's the year that people start to make that switch. And this is an easy way to access AI. It's just a little hack. It's just a little shortcut. But the bigger point, I think, of this Hub Extra is a reminder to use it and take advantage of it. Because if you're not, you're getting behind, because other people are, we are, and we're using it to great benefit.
Yeah, I agree. It's so much more than a novelty now. It's gone from being novelty to optional to, I think now we're going to be coming into a year where, like you say, you are going to start being left behind if you're not using it. So do, because if you use it the right way, it is awesome. Well, that is thankfully done. That is our predictions episode for this year. Thank you for joining us, and let us know how the year panned out for you. What did you think, and how did the year match your expectations? You can let us know without having to make it public like we did. And it may be nearly Christmas, but it doesn't matter. We're going to be back to do it all again next week. So we'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.